A cold billionaire walked in on the black maid singing and dancing with his visually impaired daughter. What he did next stunned everyone and changes everything. The sound of laughter echoing through the marble halls of his Fifth Avenue penthouse stopped Theodore Blackwood dead in his tracks, because his daughter hadn't laughed in 3 years, not since the accident that took her sight and her mother in one devastating night. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I'm bringing you another story just as interesting and unforgettable as this one. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's continue. The elevator climbed past the 40th floor of the Blackwood Tower, carrying Theodore Blackwood toward another evening he'd rather avoid. At 52, he'd mastered the art of emotional distance, boardroom negotiations, hostile takeovers, and crushing competitors required ice in his veins. But walking through the mahogany doors of his penthouse every night? That demanded something he'd lost 3 years ago, the ability to face his daughter's darkness. Snow dusted the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park as Theodore loosened his Italian silk tie. The penthouse stretched before him like a museum, pristine, cold, and silent. Exactly how he preferred it. His assistant's voice still echoed in his ears. "Sir, the new caregiver starts tomorrow. I've reviewed her credentials extensively. 6 caregivers in 8 months. None lasted longer than a few weeks with Isabella." His 12-year-old daughter had perfected the art of driving away anyone who tried to penetrate the wall she'd built around herself. Theodore understood that wall. He'd built one too, brick by brick, contract by contract, until feeling nothing seemed easier than feeling everything. The grandfather clock in the foyer chimed 7 times. Isabella would be in her room, probably sitting by her window, fingers tracing patterns only she could see. He should check on her. He should ask about her day, her tutoring session, her physical therapy. Instead, he poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon and reviewed quarterly reports until the numbers blurred together. What kind of father chooses spreadsheets over his own child? The question haunted him nightly, but the answer remained the same. A father who couldn't bear to see his failures reflected in his daughter's unseeing eyes. 3 miles away in Washington Heights, Zara Williams balanced her phone between her shoulder and ear while folding her 7-year-old son's laundry. "Marcus, baby, I need you to be good for Mrs. Rodriguez tonight, okay? Mama's starting a new job tomorrow." "Is it another rich family?" Marcus asked, his gap-toothed grin disappearing as he looked up from his coloring book. "It's just work, sweetheart." Zara smoothed his hair, her heart clenching at the worry in his young eyes. At 28, she'd worked for enough wealthy families to know the pattern. They wanted her invisible, efficient, and emotionally detached from their children. But after losing her husband in Afghanistan 2 years ago, emotional detachment felt impossible when it came to kids. The job posting had been specific, seeking experienced caregiver for 12-year-old girl with visual impairment. Must maintain professional boundaries. Discretion essential. Exceptional compensation for the right candidate. Zara had almost skipped past it. The Blackwood name carried weight in New York. Everyone knew about the tech mogul's family tragedy. But the salary could finally get Marcus into a better school district, maybe even save enough for her nursing degree. She'd taken the subway to the interview, practiced her answers, and somehow convinced Theodore Blackwood's stone-faced assistant that she was exactly what they needed. Now, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, Zara wondered if she'd made a mistake. Her last employer had let her go after catching her teaching their lonely daughter to braid friendship bracelets. "We don't pay you to be her friend," the mother had said coldly. "Professional boundaries." The words felt like a straitjacket around her heart. "Mama, will you sing the happy song before you go?" Marcus called from his bed. Zara's throat tightened. Her grandmother had taught her that music was medicine, that songs could heal what words couldn't touch. Growing up in her grandmother's house in Harlem, every meal had been served with melodies, every bad day cured with rhythm. Even during the darkest months after losing Jerome, music had been her lifeline. "Of course, baby." She settled beside Marcus, her voice soft but strong as she began the gospel hymn her grandmother had sung to her, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." Tomorrow she'd enter a world where her light might not be welcome. But tonight, watching her son's face relax into sleep, Zara promised herself she wouldn't let anyone dim it completely. The elevator doors whispered open into a world that belonged in Architectural Digest. Zara stepped onto Italian marble so polished she could see her reflection, clutching her worn leather purse tighter. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across cream-colored walls lined with oil paintings worth more than most people's houses. "Miss Williams." The voice belonged to Mrs. Chin, Theodore's assistant, a woman who looked like she'd been carved from the same cold marble as the floors. "Mr. Blackwood left for Singapore this morning. Emergency merger. You'll have complete responsibility for Isabella until he returns Friday." Zara's stomach dropped. 5 days alone with a grieving child she'd never met, in a house that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. "I'd like to meet Isabella first, get a sense of her routine." Her schedule is posted in the kitchen. Breakfast at 8, tutoring from 9 to noon, physical therapy at 2. She prefers to be left alone otherwise. Mrs. Chen's heels clicked against the marble as she headed toward the elevator. The previous caregivers found it challenging when they tried to deviate from routine. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, leaving Zara alone in the silence. She'd worked in quiet houses before, but this felt different. This felt like a tomb. Following the sound of running water, she found the kitchen, a chef's dream with granite countertops and copper pots hanging like art installations. But it was the small figure sitting at the breakfast bar that made her breath catch. Isabella Blackwood sat perfectly still, her dark hair falling in waves around a face that could have belonged to a porcelain doll. She held a spoon above a bowl of untouched oatmeal, her movements mechanical, disconnected. But it was her eyes that broke Zara's heart, beautiful hazel eyes that stared straight ahead, seeing nothing, feeling everything. "Isabella." Zara approached slowly, her voice gentle. "I'm Zara. I'm going to be spending some time with you while your father's away." The girl's shoulders tensed. "I don't need another babysitter. I can take care of myself." "I'm sure you can." Zara pulled out the chair beside her, noting how Isabella's fingers tightened around the spoon. "Mind if I sit? I haven't had breakfast yet either." Isabella's head tilted slightly, the first sign of curiosity. Most people eat before they come to work. Most people don't have a 7-year-old who decides he absolutely must wear his Superman cape to school, even in December. Zara smiled, reaching for the coffee pot. "My son Marcus has very strong opinions about proper superhero attire." "You have a son?" The question came out softer than Isabella probably intended. "I do. He's probably driving his teacher crazy right about now, trying to convince his classmates that he can actually fly." Zara poured coffee into a mug, inhaling the rich aroma. "Do you like oatmeal?" Isabella's nose wrinkled. "It's supposed to be good for me." "Ah, the dreaded good-for-you breakfast." Zara opened the enormous refrigerator, scanning the contents. "You know what else is good for you? Happiness. And I happen to make the world's best chocolate chip pancakes." "Mrs. Chun says I have a schedule." "Mrs. Chin isn't here." Zara found flour, eggs, and milk. And schedules are just suggestions, right? Besides, what's the point of having a kitchen this beautiful if we don't use it? Isabella turned her head toward the sound of Zara moving around the kitchen. "Are you going to get in trouble?" "Probably." Zara cracked eggs into a bowl, whisking them with practiced ease. But some things are worth getting in trouble for. Like making a 12-year-old girl smile. I don't smile much anymore. The simple statement hit Zara like a physical blow. She set down the whisk, studying Isabella's profile. Can I ask you something? Isabella nodded cautiously. When was the last time you laughed? Really laughed? The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken pain. Finally, Isabella's voice came out as barely a whisper. Before the accident. Before everything went dark. Zara's throat tightened. She'd read the news reports, the car accident that killed Isabella's mother and left the girl blind. But seeing the living result of that tragedy, this beautiful child trapped in darkness, both literal and emotional, made the statistics feel devastating. Darkness doesn't have to be empty, Zara said quietly, returning to the pancake batter. Sometimes the most beautiful things happen when we can't see them coming. That's what everyone says. Isabella's voice turned bitter. The therapists, the doctors, the parade of people my father pays to fix me. They all say the same things. I'm not trying to fix you. Zara poured batter onto the hot griddle, the sizzle filling the kitchen. I'm trying to make pancakes. There's a difference. Isabella's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. They smell good. They taste even better. My grandmother's recipe. She used to say that food tastes better when it's made with love instead of obligation. Did she teach you to cook? She taught me a lot of things. Zara flipped the pancakes, golden brown and perfect. Cooking, singing, dancing. She said music and food were the two languages everyone understood, no matter where they came from. I used to love music. Isabella's admission came out reluctantly. Before. What changed? Everything sounds different now. Like the world got quieter and louder at the same time. Isabella's fingers drummed against the counter. Music used to have colors. Now it's just sound. Zara slid a plate of pancakes in front of Isabella, then gently guided her hand to the fork. Maybe it's not about the colors you used to see. Maybe it's about the feelings you can still feel. Isabella took a bite, her eyes widening. These are really good. Told you. Zara settled beside her with her own plate. My grandmother always said the secret ingredient was joy. Can't make good pancakes if you're not happy to be making them. Are you happy to be here? The question caught Zara off guard. In this cold, beautiful house with its grieving inhabitant, happiness felt like a foreign concept. But looking at Isabella, really looking at her, Zara realized something had shifted. The girl's shoulders had relaxed. Her death grip on the fork had loosened. For the first time since she'd arrived, Isabella looked less like a broken doll and more like what she actually was. A 12-year-old girl who'd forgotten how to be young. Yeah, Zara said, surprised by the truth in her voice. I think I am. Isabella smiled then. A real smile that transformed her entire face. And in that moment, as morning light streamed through the penthouse windows and the taste of chocolate chip pancakes lingered in the air, something began to heal. Neither of them noticed the security camera in the corner of the kitchen, silently recording everything. The physical therapist's voice carried down the hallway like a drill sergeant's bark. Isabella, we need to focus. Your father is paying good money for these sessions. Zara paused outside the home gym, her hands full of fresh laundry. Through the cracked door, she could see Isabella on a balance beam, her face a mask of concentration and barely contained frustration. The therapist, a stern woman named Dr. Patterson, stood with her arms crossed, radiating disapproval. I can't feel where my feet are supposed to go, Isabella said, her voice tight with suppressed tears. That's exactly why we practice. Again. Isabella stepped forward, wobbled, and caught herself on the rail. Her jaw clenched so hard Zara could see the muscles working. Again, Dr. Patterson repeated. I need a break. You need to build strength and confidence. Your father specifically requested. My father requested a lot of things. Isabella's voice cracked. That doesn't mean I have to like them. Zara knocked softly and entered. Sorry to interrupt. Isabella, I brought your favorite sweater up from the wash. Dr. Patterson's eyes narrowed. We're in the middle of a session. Of course. Zara set the sweater on a nearby chair, but made no move to leave. Isabella, how are you feeling? You look tired. I'm fine, Isabella lied, her knuckles white where she gripped the rail. She's exactly where she needs to be, Dr. Patterson said firmly. These exercises are crucial for her development of spatial awareness and… She's 12, Zara interrupted gently. Maybe what she needs is a few minutes to breathe. The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. Dr. Patterson's face flushed red. I don't think you understand the importance of maintaining Isabella's therapeutic schedule. Her father was very clear about… Her father isn't here, Zara said, her voice still calm but carrying an edge. And I'm looking at a child who's been pushed past her limit. Isabella's head turned toward Zara's voice, something like hope flickering across her features. Miss Williams, I've been Isabella's therapist for 2 years. I know what's best for her. Do you? Zara moved closer to Isabella, close enough to see the tremor in her hands. Because what I see is a little girl who's been told what she needs so many times she's forgotten what she wants. What I want doesn't matter, Isabella whispered. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She knelt beside the balance beam, bringing herself to Isabella's eye level. What you want is the only thing that matters. Dr. Patterson stepped forward. This is highly inappropriate. You're undermining Isabella's treatment, and I'll be reporting this to Mr. Blackwood immediately. Go ahead, Zara said without taking her eyes off Isabella. Tell him his daughter is exhausted and needs someone to listen to her instead of just talking at her. Isabella's breath came in short gasps. I want to get down. I want to get down right now. Then get down, sweetheart. She needs to complete the session, Dr. Patterson insisted. She needs to feel like she has some control over her own body, Zara countered, helping Isabella step down from the beam. When was the last time anyone asked you what you wanted to do, Isabella? Isabella's face crumpled. I don't remember. Dr. Patterson packed her equipment with sharp, angry movements. This is exactly why the previous caregivers didn't work out. You people always think you know better than the professionals. You people. The words hung in the air like a slap. Zara's spine straightened, but her voice remained steady. I think Isabella knows her own body better than anyone. Her father will hear about this. Dr. Patterson headed for the door, then paused. And Miss Williams? I'd be very careful about overstepping your boundaries. This family has very specific expectations about appropriate behavior from the staff. The door slammed behind her, leaving Zara and Isabella alone in the sudden silence. I'm sorry, Isabella whispered. I'm sorry she was mean to you. You have nothing to apologize for. Zara sat on the floor beside Isabella, who had curled up in a chair. How do you feel? Scared. Isabella's voice was barely audible. What if she tells my father? What if he fires you? Then he fires me. Zara reached out, then paused. Can I touch your hand? Isabella nodded, and Zara gently took her small fingers in her own. But I won't apologize for standing up for you. Ever. No one ever does that. Isabella's voice cracked. Everyone just agrees with whatever he says. Whatever the doctors say. Whatever's best for me. What would be best for you right now? Isabella was quiet for a long moment. I want to go to my room. I want to listen to music. Real music, not the stupid meditation sounds Dr. Patterson plays. Then that's what we'll do. They made their way to Isabella's room. A space that felt more like a luxury hotel suite than a child's bedroom. Everything was perfectly arranged, perfectly safe, perfectly sterile. The only personal touch was a framed photo on the nightstand. Isabella and a woman who must have been her mother, both laughing at something outside the frame. "She was beautiful," Zara said softly. "Everyone says I look like her." Isabella settled onto her bed, pulling her knees to her chest. "But I'll never know for sure." Zara's heart ached for this child who'd lost so much. "What kind of music do you want to hear?" "I don't know. Something that doesn't sound like therapy." Zara pulled out her phone, scrolling through her playlists. "How about some old school soul? My grandmother always said Aretha Franklin could cure anything." The opening notes of "Natural Woman" filled the room, and Isabella's entire body seemed to relax. She leaned back against her pillows, a small smile playing at her lips. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Music always is." Zara sat on the edge of the bed. "Want to tell me what you're thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how different everything feels when you're here." Isabella's voice was thoughtful. "Like maybe I'm not as broken as everyone thinks." "You're not broken at all. Dr. Patterson thinks I am. My father thinks I am. They all think if they just fix me enough, I'll be normal again." "Normal is overrated," Zara said firmly. "You're not supposed to be normal. You're supposed to be you." Isabella turned toward her, unseeing eyes bright with unshed tears. "What if I don't remember who that is? Then we'll figure it out together." They sat in comfortable silence as Aretha's voice washed over them. For the first time since arriving at the penthouse, Zara felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But she also knew that Dr. Patterson's threat wasn't empty. By the time Theodore Blackwood returned from Singapore, there would be a detailed report waiting for him about his new caregiver's inappropriate behavior. The question was, would he listen to the professional who'd been treating his daughter for 2 years, or would he see what Zara saw, a child who needed love more than she needed fixing? As if reading her thoughts, Isabella's voice cut through the music. "He's going to fire you, isn't he?" Zara looked at this brave, beautiful girl who'd already lost so much. "I don't know, sweetheart. But whatever happens, I want you to remember something. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to have your feelings matter. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Isabella nodded, but her face had already begun to close off again, preparing for another loss. And Zara realized that in trying to protect this child, she might have just guaranteed that Isabella would lose the first person in years who'd truly listened to her. The security camera in the corner continued its silent recording, capturing every word, every gesture, every moment of connection that would soon be used as evidence against them both. The blizzard hit New York like a freight train, dumping 18 inches of snow in 12 hours and grinding the city to a halt. Zara stood at the kitchen window, watching the wind whip ice crystals against the glass while her phone buzzed with increasingly frantic messages. All subway lines suspended indefinitely. "Mrs. Rodriguez can't get to Marcus, apartment building snowed in. City declares state of emergency." Her hands shook as she dialed Marcus's number. He answered on the first ring, his 7-year-old voice tight with worry. "Mama? Mrs. Rodriguez says you can't come home today." "I know, baby. The snow is too deep for the trains to run." Zara pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "But you're safe and I'm safe, and that's what matters." "When will you come home?" "As soon as the storm stops, I promise." She could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's voice in the background, speaking rapid Spanish to someone else. Then Marcus was back on the line. "Mama, Mrs. Rodriguez's son says maybe tomorrow night, maybe the day after. The whole city is stuck." Zara's chest tightened. She'd never spent a night away from Marcus since Jerome died. The idea of being trapped in this marble fortress while her son needed her felt like suffocation. "Miss Williams?" Isabella's voice came from the doorway, tentative and small. Is everything okay? Zara turned, quickly wiping her eyes. Just some weather complications, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about. But Isabella's expression sharpened with the intuition of a child who'd learned to read emotions through voice and body language. You're scared. I can hear it. I'm concerned about my son. He's stuck at the babysitter's and I can't get to him. You have a son? Isabella moved closer, navigating the kitchen with practiced ease. How old is he? 7. His name is Marcus. Zara's voice softened despite her anxiety. He's probably scared too. We've never been apart overnight since his father died. Isabella's face crumpled with understanding. I'm sorry. I know what it feels like to be scared and alone. Before Zara could respond, the intercom crackled to life. Theodore's voice filled the kitchen, sharp and commanding even through the static. Miss Williams, please come to my office immediately. Zara's stomach dropped. Dr. Patterson had made good on her threat. What does he want? Isabella whispered. I think I'm about to find out. Theodore's home office was a monument to success. Awards, photographs with world leaders, original artwork worth more than most people's homes. But today, it felt like a courtroom. He sat behind his massive desk. Dr. Patterson's report spread before him like evidence in a trial. Please sit, he said without looking up. Zara remained standing. If this is about yesterday's therapy session, I can explain. Can you? Theodore's eyes finally met hers, cold and assessing. Because Dr. Patterson's report paints a very clear picture of insubordination and unprofessional conduct. Your daughter was exhausted and overwhelmed. She needed to complete her prescribed therapy. Theodore's voice cut through hers like ice. Dr. Patterson has been working with Isabella for 2 years. She knows what's best for my daughter's development. With respect, sir, Isabella knows what's best for Isabella. Theodore stood, moving to the window where the blizzard raged outside. Miss Williams, you've been here exactly 2 days. Dr. Patterson has advanced degrees in physical therapy and childhood development. Your qualifications are, what? A high school diploma and good intentions. The words stung, but Zara kept her voice steady. My qualification is that I listen to her. Actually listen, not just hear what I want to hear. Isabella is a child. Children don't always know what's good for them. She's also a human being with feelings and opinions that matter. Theodore turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Dr. Patterson also mentioned some concerning comments about my parenting methods. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. I never said anything about your parenting. You implied that Isabella's needs weren't being met, that she was being pushed beyond her limits. That sounds like criticism to me. It sounds like observation to me. They stared at each other across the desk, the tension crackling between them like the lightning outside. Theodore's jaw worked as if he were grinding his teeth. I should fire you, he said finally. Then why don't you? Because. He paused, something flickering across his face. Because Isabella asked me not to. Zara blinked in surprise. She did. She called me in Singapore at 3 in the morning to tell me that you were the first person in years who made her feel like she mattered. Theodore's voice carried a note of something that might have been pain. Do you have any idea how that made me feel? I imagine it was complicated. It was devastating. He sat back down, suddenly looking older than his 52 years. My daughter had to call me halfway around the world to tell me that a stranger was giving her what I should have been giving her all along. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they wanted to cross. Mr. Blackwood. Theodore. If you're going to be trapped in my house for the next day or two, we might as well dispense with formalities. Zara studied his face, seeing past the cold mask to something raw and vulnerable underneath. Why didn't you fire me? Because I'm tired of being the villain in my daughter's story. He rubbed his temples. And because she's right. You do listen to her. I've been watching the security footage. Heat flooded Zara's cheeks. You've been watching us? I watch everything that happens in this house. It's how I keep her safe. Theodore's voice turned defensive. But what I saw yesterday, she was more animated in one afternoon with you than she's been in months with me. She's a wonderful child. She just needs. She needs what I can't give her. The words came out like a confession. I don't know how to be around her anymore. Everything I do reminds her of what she's lost. Every conversation turns into a medical consultation or a therapy session. So change the conversation. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Zara moved closer to the desk. Talk to her about music, about dreams, about what makes her laugh. Stop treating her like a patient and start treating her like your daughter. Theodore's face crumpled for just a moment before he regained control. I don't know how to do that anymore. Then learn. She's 12, not terminal. She's blind, not broken. Everyone keeps telling me what she needs, but no one asks what I need. The words burst out of him like a dam breaking. I need to know that she's going to be okay. I need to know that I'm not failing her every single day. I need to know that losing her mother didn't destroy her chances at a normal life. Zara's anger melted into something like understanding. You're not failing her. You're scared. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. She sat down across from him, noting how his hands shook slightly as he reached for his coffee. But she's scared too. And she needs her father to be brave enough to let her feel what she feels without trying to fix it. Theodore was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the city, trapping them all in this moment of brutal honesty. Dr. Patterson wants me to let you go, he said finally. What do you want? I want my daughter to be happy. I want her to feel like she matters. He paused, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I want to know how to be her father again. Then maybe we can help each other figure that out. Before Theodore could respond, the lights flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. The building's intercom system crackled to life with the doorman's voice. Mr. Blackwood, we've lost main power. Backup generators are running, but we may need to conserve energy. The storm has knocked out power to half of Manhattan. In the sudden dimness, Theodore looked smaller, more human. Miss Williams, Zara, I have a confession to make. What's that? I've been avoiding Isabella not because I don't love her, but because I love her too much. Every time I look at her, I see her mother. Every time she struggles, I feel like I'm failing them both. Zara's throat tightened. She sees her mother in you too. But she needs to see her father as well. I don't know how to be both. You don't have to be both. You just have to be you. The emergency lighting flickered again, and somewhere in the penthouse, they could hear Isabella calling out in worry. Theodore started to rise, but Zara put a hand on his arm. Let me go to her first, she said gently. Then maybe you could come too. Not as the man who's trying to fix her, but as the father who loves her. Theodore nodded, his throat working with emotion. Zara? Yes. Thank you. For listening to her. For seeing her. He paused. For seeing me. As Zara headed toward Isabella's frightened voice, she realized that the storm outside had done more than trap them together. It had stripped away the pretenses and professional boundaries that had kept them all at arm's length. Now, in the red-tinged darkness of the penthouse, they had no choice but to be real with each other. The question was, would they be brave enough to stay real when the lights came back on? Sometimes it takes a crisis to break down the walls we've built around our hearts. Theodore and Zara are both discovering that the masks they wear to protect themselves might be the very things keeping them from connecting with the people they love most. Have you ever found that your biggest breakthroughs came during your most challenging moments? Share your story in the comments. The backup generators hummed through the penthouse like a mechanical heartbeat as Zara found Isabella curled in the corner of her bedroom, her hands pressed over her ears. The emergency lighting cast long shadows across the room, making everything feel uncertain and strange. "Hey, sweetheart," Zara said softly, settling beside her on the plush carpet. "The power's just taking a little break. The generators are keeping us safe." "I hate when things change suddenly," Isabella whispered, her voice muffled by her hands. "It reminds me of that night." Zara's heart clenched. "What night, honey?" Isabella's hands slowly lowered from her ears, revealing tears that caught the red emergency light. "The night Mama died. The night everything went dark." Before Zara could respond, Theodore's voice came from the doorway, unusually gentle. "Isabella? Are you all right?" Isabella's head turned toward her father's voice, and Zara saw something shift in the girl's expression, a flicker of hope mixed with caution. "Daddy? You came." "Of course I came." Theodore moved into the room, his usual commanding presence softened by the dim lighting. "I heard you were scared." "I'm always scared when the lights go out," Isabella admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It makes me remember." Theodore knelt beside them, his expensive suit forgotten as he reached out tentatively to touch his daughter's hand. "Remember what, sweetheart?" "The accident. The way everything went quiet and then dark forever." Zara watched Theodore's face crumple with pain. She'd wondered about the details of what happened, but seeing the raw grief in both their faces made her realize she was witnessing something sacred, a wound that had never properly healed. "Tell me about that night," Theodore said, his voice barely steady. "Tell me what you remember." Isabella's small hand found her father's, gripping it tightly. "We were driving home from my piano recital. Mama was so happy because I played Moonlight Sonata without any mistakes. She kept saying how proud she was, how proud you'd be when you got back from London." Theodore's breath caught. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about that night." Isabella's voice grew stronger, as if telling the story was releasing something she'd held inside for too long. "Mama was singing along to the radio, and I was in the back seat practicing my curtsy for when I tell you about the recital. Then the truck ran the red light, and everything changed," Theodore finished, his voice thick with emotion. "The doctors said you were lucky to survive," Zara said gently. "But it didn't feel lucky, did it?" Isabella shook her head. "I kept waiting to wake up. I kept thinking that if I tried hard enough, if I was good enough, maybe the darkness would go away. Maybe Mama would come back." Theodore's composure finally broke. "Isabella, baby, I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have been with you that night instead of halfway around the world chasing another deal." "But you came to the hospital," Isabella said, confusion in her voice. "You were there when I woke up." "I was there, but I wasn't really there," Theodore admitted, his voice cracking. "I was so consumed with guilt, so terrified of losing you too, that I stopped being your father and became your manager, your problem solver." Zara felt tears burning her eyes as she watched father and daughter navigate this minefield of grief together. "Theodore," she said softly, "maybe you should tell her about that night from your perspective." Theodore looked at her with gratitude and terror. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Isabella said firmly. "I need to know, Daddy. I need to understand why you went away even though you stayed." Theodore closed his eyes, gathering himself. When he opened them, Zara saw 3 years of buried pain swimming in their depths. "I was in a board meeting in London when the call came," he began, his voice distant with memory. "The hospital said there'd been an accident, that she was gone, and you were in surgery. I remember dropping the phone and running out of that meeting without a word to anyone." "You flew home," Isabella said, encouraging him to continue. "I flew home, but the flight felt like a lifetime. I kept thinking about all the moments I'd missed because I was working. All the recitals I'd attended by video call instead of in person. All the bedtime stories I'd let your mother handle because I had emails to answer." Isabella's grip on his hand tightened. "But you were building something important. Mama always said you were changing the world." "I was changing the world, but I was missing yours," Theodore said, his voice breaking. "And when I got to the hospital and saw you lying there, so small and broken, I made a promise to myself that I would never let anything hurt you again." "So you tried to control everything," Zara said, understanding flooding through her. "I tried to control everything," Theodore confirmed. "I hired the best doctors, the best therapists, the best tutors. I turned our home into a fortress. I scheduled every minute of your day because I thought if I could just manage your life perfectly, I could protect you from any more pain." "But you couldn't protect me from being sad," Isabella said, her voice wise beyond her years. "You couldn't protect me from missing Mama. You couldn't protect me from feeling different and alone." Theodore's shoulders shook. "I know. And in trying to protect you from pain, I ended up causing you a different kind of hurt. I made you feel like your feelings were problems to be solved instead of experiences to be shared." The room fell silent except for the hum of the generators and the wind howling outside. Zara felt like she was witnessing something she had no right to see, but also something that needed a witness. The moment when two people who loved each other finally stopped hiding behind their walls. "Daddy," Isabella said finally, "I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "I stopped trying to get better because I thought if I got better, if I stopped needing so much help, you might leave again. Like you did after Mama died." Theodore's face went white. "Isabella, no. I never left. I was always here." "Your body was here," Isabella said, her voice gentle but firm. "But you weren't. You were somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't reach you. And I thought maybe if I stayed broken, you'd have to stay close to fix me." The truth of it hit Theodore like a physical blow. "Oh God. Oh, Isabella, I'm so sorry. I never meant. I was trying to take care of you, and instead I made you feel like you had to take care of me." "We both got lost," Isabella said, her voice steady despite her tears. "But maybe we can find our way back to each other." Zara watched Theodore reach out and pull his daughter into his arms, really hold her for what looked like the first time in years. But as she observed this moment of healing, something else clicked into place in her mind, a connection she hadn't expected. "Theodore," she said carefully, "what was your wife's name?" "Catherine," he said, his voice muffled against Isabella's hair. "Catherine Williams Blackwood. She kept her maiden name professionally. She was a social worker in the Bronx before we married." Zara's blood went cold. "Williams? Catherine Williams?" Theodore lifted his head, noticing the change in her voice. "Why? What year did she graduate from Fordham School of Social Work?" 2008, she was 26. Theodore's eyes narrowed. "Zara, why are you asking these questions?" Zara's hands were shaking now, memories flooding back like a broken dam. "Because I think I knew your wife." The room went deadly quiet. Even the storm outside seemed to pause. "That's impossible," Theodore said. "Catherine worked with underprivileged families in the South Bronx. She never mentioned knowing anyone named." "Zara Thompson," Zara whispered. "That was my maiden name before I married Jerome Williams." Catherine Williams was my caseworker when I was 16. Isabella sat up straighter. What do you mean, caseworker? Zara's throat felt like sandpaper. I aged out of the foster care system when I was 15. I was living in a group home in the Bronx, working 3 jobs to save money for college. Catherine Williams was assigned to my case to help me transition to independent living. Theodore stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. You're saying my wife was your social worker? I'm saying your wife saved my life, Zara said, tears streaming down her face. She helped me get my GED, apply for financial aid, find safe housing. She came to my high school graduation when I had no one else there. She what? Theodore's voice was barely a whisper. She gave me a scholarship. A private scholarship she'd set up for kids aging out of foster care. She paid for my first year of community college out of her own pocket. The silence that followed was deafening. Theodore's face had gone through several emotions: shock, disbelief, and something that might have been recognition. The scholarship was called the Second Chances Foundation, Zara continued. She made me promise to pay it forward someday, to help other kids who needed a second chance. Mama had a scholarship foundation? Isabella asked, wonder in her voice. She never told me about helping individual kids, Theodore said, his voice strange. She mentioned the foundation, but she said it was confidential. She said the recipients needed privacy to rebuild their lives. She was protecting me, Zara realized. She knew that if people found out a billionaire's wife was personally mentoring foster kids, it might make us targets or make us feel like charity cases. But why didn't she tell me about you specifically? Theodore asked, still trying to process. Because she knew I was pregnant, Zara said, her voice breaking. She knew I was 18 and scared and that the father was deploying to Afghanistan. She helped me figure out how to finish school and raise Marcus on my own. Marcus, Theodore repeated. Your son. Catherine was the one who suggested his name, Zara said through her tears. She said it meant warrior, and that any child of mine would need to be strong. Isabella reached out and found Zara's hand. Mama helped raise Marcus? She visited us in the hospital after he was born. She brought gifts, clothes, books, a savings account she'd opened for his college fund. She said every child deserved to know they were valued, even if they came into the world during difficult circumstances. Theodore's face was a map of conflicting emotions. She never told me she was so personally involved with her clients. She wasn't supposed to be, Zara admitted. But Catherine couldn't help herself. She saw kids who needed someone to believe in them, and she became that someone. That sounds like Catherine, Theodore said, a sad smile crossing his face. She was always bringing home stray cats and people who needed help. I used to tease her about having a savior complex. She didn't just save me, Zara said. She taught me that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up for people when they need you most. Is that why you're so good with Isabella? Theodore asked. Because Catherine taught you how to see what kids really need? Catherine taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is simply witness their pain without trying to fix it, Zara said. She taught me that healing happens in relationship, not in isolation. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. So Mama sent you to us, she said finally. What do you mean? Zara asked. Mama always said she'd find a way to take care of us, even after she was gone. And now you're here, taking care of me the way she took care of you. Theodore's breath caught. Catherine used to say that, he whispered. She used to say that love finds a way to continue itself even after we're gone. She was right, Zara said. She planted seeds in my life that grew into the ability to care for other people. And now those seeds are helping me care for her daughter. But there's more, Theodore said suddenly, his executive mind putting pieces together. If Catherine was your caseworker, then she would have had to document her contact with you. There would be records, photos. There are, Zara said. I have them at home. Pictures of her at my graduation, copies of the scholarship paperwork, even a few letters she wrote me when I was struggling through my first semester. I need to see them, Theodore said urgently. I need to see that part of her life that she kept private. Why? Theodore's voice broke completely. Because I've been living with the guilt that I didn't know her as well as I should have. I've been torturing myself with the idea that I was too focused on work to see who she really was. But if she was out there changing lives like yours, if she was building a legacy of love that I never even knew about, then you'll know that she saw you clearly too, Zara finished. She saw a man who was working to build something meaningful, and she loved you for it. She never told me I was working too much, Theodore said, wonder in his voice. She never made me feel guilty for traveling or for the long hours. Because she knew you were both building something, Zara said. She was building a foundation for vulnerable kids, and you were building a company that would fund that foundation for generations. Isabella wiped her eyes. Mama and Daddy were a team even when they were apart. They were, Zara agreed. And Catherine's love didn't die with her. It's still here in Isabella, in the scholarship recipients, in the way she taught me to see people's hearts instead of their circumstances. Theodore stood up abruptly and moved to the window, staring out at the storm. All this time I thought I'd failed her. I thought I'd been too absent, too focused on the wrong things. You weren't absent, Zara said firmly. You were providing. You were making it possible for her to give away money and time because she knew you were building something stable and lasting. But after she died, I couldn't figure out how to be both, Theodore said. I couldn't be the provider and the nurturer. You don't have to be both, Zara said, moving to stand beside him. You just have to be you. Catherine didn't fall in love with you because you were perfect. She fell in love with you because you were passionate about making a difference. But I stopped making a difference, Theodore said. I stopped everything except trying to keep Isabella safe. Safe isn't the same as happy, Isabella said from across the room. Mama wouldn't want me to be just safe. She'd want me to be brave. Theodore turned back to his daughter, seeing her clearly for the first time in years. You're right. She would want you to be brave. She would want you to sing and dance and take risks and make mistakes and live. Like I was doing with Zara yesterday, Isabella said, a smile breaking through her tears. Like you were doing with Zara yesterday, Theodore agreed. And I almost fired her for it. But you didn't, Zara said. Because somewhere inside, you knew Catherine would have approved. Catherine would have loved you, Theodore said, his voice full of certainty. She would have loved that you're here, that you're helping Isabella find her joy again. She would have loved that you're finally ready to find yours too, Zara replied. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the penthouse, something had shifted. The secrets that had been keeping them apart were now the very things binding them together. They were no longer three separate people trapped by circumstances. They were a family connected by love, loss, and the enduring power of Catherine's legacy. Daddy, Isabella said softly. Yes, sweetheart. Can we look at the pictures of Mama and Zara tomorrow? I want to see the part of her life I never knew about. We'll look at them together, Theodore promised. All of us. As the three of them settled back onto the carpet, something had fundamentally changed. They weren't just weathering the storm anymore. They were finding their way back to each other through it. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, transforming the space that had felt like a mausoleum into something warmer, more alive. Theodore sat at the dining table, not his usual spot at the head, but in the middle, with Isabella on one side and Zara on the other. Between them lay a collection of photographs, letters, and documents that painted a picture of Catherine Williams Blackwood they'd never seen before. "Look at this one," Isabella said, her fingers tracing the edges of a photograph Zara had brought from her apartment in Washington Heights. "Tell me what you see." Zara smiled, studying the image of a 27-year-old Catherine standing beside an 18-year-old version of herself outside Fordham University. "Your mama is wearing that blue dress she loved, the one with the tiny flowers. She's got her arm around my shoulders, and we're both grinning like we've just conquered the world. That was my graduation day from the program," Zara continued, her voice soft with memory. "I'd just gotten my certificate in early childhood development. Catherine insisted on taking me to lunch at this fancy restaurant in Manhattan afterward. I was so nervous about the cloth napkins and multiple forks." Theodore picked up another photo, Catherine at what looked like a community center, surrounded by a group of teenagers. "She never told me about this place." "The Bronx Youth Foundation," Zara explained. "She volunteered there every Saturday morning. She'd help kids with college applications, job interview practice, life skills. She said Saturday mornings were for planting seeds." "Saturday mornings," Theodore repeated, his voice distant. "She always said she had errands to run on Saturday mornings. I never questioned it." "She was protecting that space," Zara said gently. "Not because she was ashamed of it, but because she knew those kids needed to feel special, not like they were just another charitable cause for a wealthy family." Isabella picked up a letter written in Catherine's careful handwriting. "What does this one say?" Zara took the letter, recognizing it immediately. "This is from when Marcus was 6 months old. I was struggling with postpartum depression, and your mama wrote to remind me that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was wisdom." She cleared her throat and began reading. "Dear Zara, I know these days feel endless and impossible. I know you're questioning every decision and wondering if you're strong enough to be the mother Marcus needs. But I want you to remember something. The fact that you're worried about being a good mother is proof that you already are one. The best parents are the ones who care enough to doubt themselves." Theodore's eyes filled with tears. That sounds exactly like something she'd say. "There's more," Zara continued reading. "I see so much of myself in you, that fierce determination to prove you can handle everything alone. But love multiplies when it's shared, and strength grows when it's supported. Let people help you not because you need rescuing, but because community is how we heal." "Community is how we heal," Isabella repeated thoughtfully. "That's what we're doing right now, isn't it?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Theodore asked. "We're not just 3 people anymore," Isabella said, her voice gaining confidence. "We're a family that Mama helped create. She connected you and Zara years ago, and now she's brought us all together." Zara felt her heart swell as she watched Theodore really look at his daughter, not as a problem to be managed or a victim to be protected, but as a wise, beautiful girl who'd inherited her mother's gift for seeing connections others missed. "You know what I think?" Theodore said, leaning back in his chair. "I think your mother would be proud of all 3 of us right now." "Even me?" Isabella asked, a flicker of her old insecurity surfacing. "Especially you," Theodore said firmly. "You've been braver than any of us. You've been living in the dark for 3 years, but you never stopped hoping for light." "I stopped hoping sometimes," Isabella admitted, "especially when the caregivers would leave." "They left because they weren't the right people," Zara said. "They were trying to fix you instead of seeing you." "But you see me," Isabella said, reaching for Zara's hand. "You see all of me, the sad parts and the happy parts and the parts that are still figuring out how to exist in the world." Theodore watched this exchange with something that felt like awe. "Zara, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you stay?" After that first day when Isabella was so resistant, after I was so cold and unwelcoming, why didn't you just find another job? Zara was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Because I recognized something in both of you that I'd seen in myself. You were both drowning in your own ways, but you were drowning separately. And I knew from my own experience that healing doesn't happen in isolation. What do you mean? Isabella asked. When I was in foster care, I learned to survive by not needing anyone. I thought independence meant never being vulnerable. But your mama taught me that real strength comes from being willing to be seen, even when you're scared or broken or imperfect. She taught you that people could be trusted, Theodore said, understanding dawning in his voice. She taught me that love isn't something you earn through perfection, Zara corrected. It's something you receive by being brave enough to be yourself. Isabella tilted her head. Is that why you started singing with me? Because you knew I needed to be seen. I started singing with you because you reminded me of myself at 18, scared and alone and convinced that if I made myself small enough, maybe the world wouldn't hurt me anymore. But the world did hurt you, Theodore said. You lost your husband, you've struggled financially, you've had to work multiple jobs to survive. The world hurt me, Zara agreed. But it also gave me Marcus, and it gave me the tools to help other people. Your wife planted seeds in my life that grew into the ability to recognize when someone needs what I once needed. And what did you need? Isabella asked. I needed someone to believe that my joy mattered, Zara said simply. I needed someone to see past my circumstances to my heart. Theodore stood up and walked to the window, not to avoid the conversation this time, but to process the magnitude of what was happening. Catherine was building a legacy I never even knew about. She was building a legacy with you, Zara said. Your success made her generosity possible. Your love gave her the confidence to take risks with vulnerable kids. But I wasn't present enough, Theodore said, turning back to face them. I missed too much. You were present for what mattered most, Isabella said, her voice steady. You were present for Mama. You made her happy. And when she died, you made sure I was safe. Safe isn't enough, Theodore said. I see that now. Safe was the beginning, Zara said. It was the foundation. But now we get to build something beautiful on top of it. Theodore returned to the table, his expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday about Marcus being in school. What about it? I'd like to meet him, Theodore said. I'd like to meet the little boy Catherine helped bring into the world. Zara's eyes widened. Do you want to meet Marcus? I want to meet the child who taught you how to be the mother figure Isabella needed, Theodore clarified. And I want him to know about the connection between our families. He's 7, Zara said carefully. He might not understand all the complexities. Children understand love, Isabella said. They understand when people care about them. That's what matters. Speaking of which, Theodore said, his voice taking on a different tone, I need to ask you both something, and I need you to be honest with me. What is it? Zara asked. Where do we go from here? Theodore said. Because I can't go back to the way things were. I can't pretend to be the distant, controlling father anymore. And I can't pretend that you're just an employee, Zara. Not after everything we've shared. The room fell silent as all three of them contemplated the weight of that question. I don't want to go back either, Isabella said finally. I like having a family again. I like having people who see me and don't try to fix me. But what does that mean practically? Zara asked. I still need to work. I still need to support Marcus. What if work looked different? Theodore suggested. What if instead of being Isabella's caregiver, you became? What? Zara prompted when he trailed off. What if you became family? Isabella said, her voice bright with possibility. What if we all became family? Theodore and Zara looked at each other across the table, both seeing the same hope and fear reflected in each other's eyes. Isabella, Theodore said gently, building a family is complicated. There are a lot of things to consider. Like what? Isabella asked. Like the fact that Zara and I come from very different worlds, Theodore said. Like the fact that people might not understand or accept our connection. Do you care what other people think? Isabella asked. Theodore considered this. I used to care a lot about what people thought. But Catherine taught me that the only opinions that matter are the ones that come from people who love you. Then it's simple, Isabella said. Do we love each other? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zara felt her heart racing as she looked at these two people who'd become so important to her in such a short time. Yes, Theodore said quietly. I love both of you. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone again. I love you too, Isabella said immediately. Both of you. You make me feel like myself again. They both turned to look at Zara, who felt tears streaming down her face. I love you both too, she whispered. You've given me something I didn't know I was looking for. What's that? Theodore asked. A place to belong, Zara said. A place where my heart can be safe. As these three hearts found their way to each other, something beautiful was being born from the ashes of loss and grief. Sometimes the most powerful families are the ones we choose, the ones that form when hearts recognize each other across all the barriers that should keep them apart. Have you ever experienced that moment when you realize you've found your chosen family? Share your stories in the comments. Theodore reached across the table and took both of their hands in his. Then let's figure out how to make this work. Let's figure out how to be a family. A real family, Isabella said, her face glowing with joy. The kind Mama would have loved. The kind Mama helped create, Zara added, squeezing their hands. Outside, the December sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the penthouse and filling it with light. Inside, three hearts that had been broken by loss were learning to beat together again, connected by love, strengthened by truth, and blessed by the continuing legacy of a woman who'd believed in second chances. The healing had begun. Theodore had barely settled into his leather chair when his phone buzzed with an urgent message from his head of security. Sir, we need to discuss the Williams situation immediately. Conference room. Now. The happiness from yesterday's breakthrough felt like a distant memory as Theodore faced three of his most trusted advisors around the polished mahogany table. His attorney, Patricia Henley, sat rigid in her tailored suit, a thick folder of documents spread before her. Security Chief Daniel Cross looked grim, his usual professional demeanor tinged with something that looked like disappointment. And his longtime business partner, Vincent Castellano, drummed his fingers impatiently on the table. Theodore, we have a problem, Patricia began without preamble. A serious one. What kind of problem? Theodore asked, though the ice forming in his stomach suggested he already knew. Vincent leaned forward. The kind that could destroy everything you've built. The kind that makes headlines and ruins reputations. Daniel opened a laptop and turned it toward Theodore. We've been monitoring social media activity related to your family since the incident with the photographers last year. Yesterday, someone posted this. The screen showed a photograph taken through the penthouse windows, a telephoto shot of Theodore, Isabella, and Zara sitting around the dining table, holding hands, surrounded by Catherine's photos and letters. The caption read, Billionaire Theodore Blackwood's secret affair with his daughter's black maid exposed. Is this why Catherine really died? Theodore's blood turned to ice. How did they get this photo? Building across the street, Daniel explained. Paparazzi have been camping there for weeks, waiting for something like this. Something like what? Theodore's voice was dangerously quiet. Patricia pulled out a tablet and began reading. The story broke on 3 gossip blogs this morning. They're calling it the Blackwood Scandal. The narrative is that you've been having an inappropriate relationship with your employee, that you're exploiting a vulnerable woman, and that your wife discovered the affair before her death. That's completely false, Theodore said through gritted teeth. Catherine and Zara were friends. Catherine died in a car accident. Truth doesn't matter, Vincent said harshly. Perception matters. And right now, the perception is that you're a predator who's taking advantage of a grieving widow. Daniel pulled up another screen. It gets worse. They've dug into Zara's background. They're painting her as a gold digger who targeted your family specifically because of Catherine's connection to her. Theodore felt his chest tighten. What kind of information? Everything, Patricia said grimly. Her financial struggles, her husband's death, her previous employment with wealthy families. They're spinning it as a calculated campaign to infiltrate your household. They have photos of her apartment building, Daniel added. They're contrasting her living situation with your penthouse, suggesting she's using Isabella to get to your fortune. And Isabella? Theodore asked, dreading the answer. They're calling her a pawn, Vincent said bluntly. A disabled child being manipulated by a scheming caregiver and her emotionally compromised father. The room fell silent as Theodore processed the magnitude of what was happening. Everything beautiful they'd built over the past few days was being twisted into something ugly and predatory. The board is meeting tomorrow, Patricia continued. Emergency session. They're concerned about the impact on Blackwood Industries' reputation and stock price. Let me guess, Theodore said bitterly. They want me to fire Zara and issue a statement denying any inappropriate relationship. They want you to do more than that, Vincent said. They want you to publicly distance yourself from her, suggest she overstepped professional boundaries, and possibly pursue legal action to protect the company. Legal action? Theodore's voice cracked with disbelief. Against Zara? For what? Breach of contract, professional misconduct, potentially fraud if they can prove she misrepresented her relationship with Catherine, Patricia listed mechanically. It would send a clear message that you're not complicit in whatever story the media is spinning. Theodore stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Below, he could see photographers gathered outside the building, their telephoto lenses trained upward like weapons. You want me to destroy an innocent woman to protect my reputation? We want you to protect your daughter, Vincent said, and your company, and the thousands of employees who depend on both. By lying about the woman who's helped heal my daughter more in 4 days than dozens of therapists managed in 3 years? By being realistic about the situation, Patricia said. Theodore, I've known you for 15 years. You're not thinking clearly. This woman has been in your life for less than a week, and you're willing to risk everything for her. I'm not risking anything, Theodore said, turning back to face them. I'm protecting my family. She's not your family, Vincent said harshly. She's an employee, a liability. And if you don't handle this correctly, she'll be the reason you lose custody of Isabella. The words hit Theodore like a physical blow. What are you talking about? Patricia opened another folder. I've been in contact with Catherine's sister, Margaret. She's been concerned about Isabella's welfare since the accident. These allegations give her grounds to petition for custody. Margaret lives in California, Theodore said weakly. She's barely been in Isabella's life. She's stable, married, lives in a traditional family environment, Patricia listed. And she's not embroiled in a scandal involving the sexualization of household staff. There's no sexualization, Theodore shouted. There's no scandal. There's just a family trying to heal. That's not what the court will see, Vincent said. They'll see a grieving widower who's become emotionally dependent on his employee, possibly to the detriment of his daughter's well-being. Daniel pulled up another screen. It gets worse. They found out about yesterday's family meeting. Someone leaked details about the photos and letters you were looking at. How could they possibly know that? Building staff, cleaning crew, security footage. There are a dozen ways information leaks from a building like this, Daniel explained. The point is, they're painting it as evidence of an inappropriate emotional relationship that's confusing Isabella about family boundaries. Theodore felt the walls closing in around him. What are you recommending? Patricia straightened her papers. Immediate termination. Public statement emphasizing that Ms. Williams overstepped professional boundaries. Legal action to recover any gifts or payments beyond her contracted salary. And a restraining order to prevent further contact with Isabella. A restraining order? Theodore's voice was barely a whisper. To protect Isabella from further manipulation, Vincent explained. And to protect you from accusations that you're allowing an inappropriate relationship to continue. You're asking me to destroy the first happiness my daughter has experienced in 3 years. We're asking you to be a father, Patricia said firmly, to put Isabella's long-term welfare above your own emotional needs. Theodore sank back into his chair, the weight of the situation crushing down on him. And if I refuse? The board will vote you out, Vincent said. Margaret will petition for custody. The media will continue to destroy your reputation. And Isabella will suffer through all of it. But if I do what you're asking, Zara suffers instead. Zara Williams is a grown woman who can take care of herself, Patricia said. Isabella is a vulnerable child who needs protection. The room fell silent again as Theodore struggled with the impossible choice before him. Through the windows, he could see the photographers multiplying, their presence a constant reminder of the spotlight that would follow every decision he made. I need time to think, he said finally. You don't have time, Vincent said. The board meeting is tomorrow at 9. The media cycle is accelerating. Every hour you delay makes this worse. Then what do you suggest? Go home, Patricia said. End Ms. Williams' employment immediately. Have security escort her from the building. Issue a statement tonight emphasizing that you're taking action to protect your daughter from inappropriate influences. And Isabella? Tell her the truth, Vincent said. That Ms. Williams was taking advantage of her vulnerability and yours. That she was not the person you thought she was. Theodore felt something break inside his chest. You want me to lie to my daughter about the woman who brought her back to life. We want you to protect your daughter from a situation that could destroy her future, Patricia said. Sometimes being a parent means making the hard choice, even when it hurts. As Theodore left the conference room, his phone buzzed with a text from Zara. Isabella and I are making dinner. Marcus is coming over to meet you both. Can't wait for you to see how happy she is. The irony was crushing. In a few hours, he'd have to walk into his penthouse and destroy the family they'd just discovered, all to protect the daughter who'd finally found her joy. Outside, the December sky was darkening, and the photographer's camera flashes lit up the sidewalk like lightning. Theodore had built an empire by making ruthless decisions, but he'd never faced a choice that would cost him his soul. The shatter point had arrived, and there was no way forward that didn't leave someone broken. Time is running out, and the pressure is mounting. Theodore faces an impossible choice that will define not just his future, but the futures of everyone he's come to love. Sometimes the cruelest decisions are the ones that seem most logical. What would you do in Theodore's position? When everything you've built is threatened, how do you choose between protecting your reputation and protecting your heart? Share your thoughts. Theodore stood in his private elevator, watching the numbers climb toward the penthouse floor. Each ping of the elevator felt like a countdown to destruction. In his briefcase sat the termination papers Patricia had prepared, along with a script for what he was supposed to say to Isabella about why Zara had to leave. The elevator doors opened to the sound of laughter echoing down the marble hallway. His daughter's laughter, something he'd almost forgotten existed. Through the archway to the living room, he could see Isabella sitting at the piano, her fingers dancing across the keys while Zara sang along, both of them giggling as they tried to harmonize. "No, no, Miss Zara," Isabella was saying, her voice bright with joy. "You're supposed to go higher on everywhere we go." "Like this," she demonstrated, her clear voice soaring on the note. "Oh my goodness, you're right." Zara laughed. "How did you get so good at this?" "Mama used to sing with me," Isabella said simply, "before she went to heaven. But I haven't wanted to sing since then. Not until you came." Theodore's hand tightened on his briefcase handle. These were the first words Isabella had spoken about Catherine in months without tears. "Your mama had good taste in music," Zara said gently. "She taught you well. Do you think she can hear us singing?" "I think she can hear everything that makes you happy," Zara replied. "And I think she's glad you're remembering how to smile." Theodore closed his eyes, leaning against the wall. The termination papers felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. "Papa!" Isabella's voice called out. "Come listen. Miss Zara taught me a new song about Christmas in New York." He forced himself to walk into the living room, pasting a smile on his face. Isabella was radiant, her cheeks flushed with excitement, her unseeing eyes bright with happiness. Zara looked up from where she knelt beside the piano bench, her warm smile faltering when she saw his expression. "Hey," she said softly. "Rough day?" "Something like that," he managed. "Papa, you have to hear this," Isabella insisted. "Miss Zara says we can go see the Christmas lights at Lincoln Center this weekend. She says there's a fountain that sounds like music when the water dances." Theodore felt his heart crack a little more. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. And Marcus is coming for dinner." Isabella continued. "Miss Zara says he makes the best cornbread in all of Manhattan. Can we ask him to teach me the recipe?" "We'll see," Theodore said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Zara stood up, studying his face with growing concern. "Isabella, why don't you go wash your hands for dinner? Marcus should be here soon." "Okay." Isabella practically bounced off the piano bench, then turned back to Theodore. "Papa, I love having Miss Zara here. She makes everything feel like home again." After Isabella disappeared down the hallway, Zara crossed her arms and fixed Theodore with a direct stare. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he lied. "Theodore Blackwood, I may have known you for less than a week, but I can read people. And right now you look like someone died. So don't you dare lie to me." He sank into one of the leather chairs, suddenly exhausted. "There's been a development." "What kind of development?" "The kind that threatens everything we've built here." Zara sat down across from him, her expression serious. "Tell me." Theodore pulled out his phone and showed her the gossip blog posts. He watched her face change as she read, her jaw tightening with each paragraph. "This is..." She started, then stopped. "This is really bad, isn't it?" "It's worse than bad. My board is meeting tomorrow. They want me to fire you and issue a statement saying you overstepped professional boundaries. And if you don't, they'll vote me out. Catherine's sister will petition for custody of Isabella. The media will continue to destroy both our reputations." Zara was quiet for a long moment, staring at the phone screen. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "So this is it, then?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know how these things work, Theodore. I've been a housekeeper for wealthy families for 8 years. When there's a scandal, the help gets blamed. When there's a problem, the employee gets fired. That's just how it is." "That's not how it is," Theodore said fiercely. Not with me. Then what are you going to do? The question hung in the air between them like a sword. Theodore opened his briefcase and pulled out the termination papers, setting them on the coffee table. Zara stared at them, her face pale. "Those are my walking papers," she said quietly. "Those are what my advisors think I should do." "But what do you think you should do?" Theodore looked toward the hallway where Isabella's voice could be heard humming the song they'd been practicing. "I think I should protect my daughter from any more pain." "And you think firing me will do that?" "I think—" Theodore's voice broke. "I think I've been selfish. I've been so desperate to see Isabella happy that I didn't consider the consequences. I brought you into our lives without thinking about what it would mean for your reputation, your future, your safety." Zara leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare make this about protecting me. Don't you dare turn this into some noble sacrifice to save the poor black woman from the mean white world. That's not what I'm doing." "That's exactly what you're doing," she said, standing up. "You're about to make the same mistake every wealthy man makes when things get complicated. You're going to choose your comfort over your courage." "This isn't about comfort," Theodore said, rising to face her. "This is about survival. If I lose custody of Isabella, she'll be alone. Really alone. Margaret doesn't know her, doesn't understand her needs. So fight for her," Zara said simply. "Fight for what's right instead of what's easy. You don't understand the forces we're up against. I understand that Isabella is happy for the first time in 3 years. I understand that you're happy for the first time in 3 years. I understand that sometimes the most important battles are the ones everyone tells you not to fight." Theodore felt tears pricking his eyes. "And what if we lose everything?" "Then we lose everything together," Zara said, stepping closer. "But at least we'll have fought for something real." The sound of the elevator opening interrupted them. Marcus's voice called out, "Hello? Hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Isabella's footsteps came racing down the hallway. "Marcus! You made it! Papa, come meet Marcus." Theodore and Zara stared at each other, the termination papers lying between them like a challenge. In the distance, Isabella was chattering excitedly about the song she'd learned, her voice full of life and joy. "I need to make a choice," Theodore said quietly. "Yes," Zara agreed. "You do. If I choose you, choose us, I might lose everything I've built. If you choose your reputation over your heart, you'll lose everything that matters." Marcus appeared in the doorway, Isabella's hand in his. "Everything okay in here? Y'all look like you're having a serious conversation." "We are," Theodore said, never taking his eyes off Zara. "We're deciding what kind of family we want to be." Isabella tilted her head, her expression concerned. "Are you and Miss Zara fighting, Papa?" "No, sweetheart," Theodore said softly. "We're figuring out how to fight for each other." He reached for the termination papers, held them for a moment, then tore them in half. The sound was sharp and final in the quiet room. "I choose love," he said, his voice steady for the first time all day. "I choose truth. I choose the family we found together, no matter what it costs." Zara's face crumpled with relief, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Isabella clapped her hands together. "Does this mean Miss Zara gets to stay?" "It means we're all going to stay together," Theodore said, kneeling down to gather his daughter into his arms. "No matter what happens next." As Zara and Marcus joined their embrace, Theodore felt something shift inside him, the last wall around his heart finally crumbling. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but tonight they were a family. And some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The choice had been made. Now came the consequences and the fight of their lives. The die is cast, and Theodore has chosen love over fear. But the real battle is just beginning. When you choose your heart over your reputation, the world has a way of testing just how strong that choice really is. Theodore walked into the emergency board meeting with his head held high and his heart steady. The same mahogany table that had felt like a tribunal yesterday now seemed like just another piece of furniture. He'd spent the night holding Isabella as she slept, listening to her peaceful breathing, knowing he'd made the right choice. The 12 board members sat in their expensive suits, their faces ranging from concerned to openly hostile. Patricia Henley shuffled papers nervously while Vincent Castellano avoided eye contact entirely. At the head of the table sat board chairman Harold Westbrook, a man who'd been Theodore's mentor 20 years ago and now looked like he was preparing to execute a former protege. "Theodore," Harold began, his voice heavy with disappointment. "I assume you've seen the morning headlines." "I have," Theodore replied, taking his seat. The newspapers spread across the table screamed variations of the same story: Blackwood's scandal deepens, and Billionaire's inappropriate relationship exposed. "The stock price has dropped 12% since yesterday," reported CFO Janet Morrison. "Our clients are asking questions. 3 major investors have requested meetings to discuss their concerns. And Catherine's sister has filed an emergency petition for custody," added Patricia. "The hearing is scheduled for next week." Theodore nodded calmly. "I expected as much." "You expected?" Harold's voice cracked with incredulity. "Theodore, do you understand what's happening here? Everything you've built, everything your father built, is at risk." "I understand perfectly," Theodore said, "which is why I've made my decision." Vincent finally looked up. "Please tell me you've come to your senses." "I have," Theodore said, standing up. "I've come to understand that some things matter more than stock prices and board approval." The room fell silent. Harold leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that yesterday, I almost made the biggest mistake of my life. I almost sacrificed the happiness of my daughter and the woman I love for the approval of people who don't know what real family looks like." "The woman you love?" Janet Morrison gasped. "Theodore, you've known her for less than a week." "I've known her long enough to see her make my daughter smile for the first time in 3 years. I've known her long enough to watch her bring music back into our home. I've known her long enough to realize that love doesn't follow corporate timelines." Harold's face was grave. "You're making an emotional decision that will have practical consequences." "I'm making a decision based on what matters most," Theodore corrected. "And what matters most is Isabella's happiness and well-being. Which is exactly why you need to end this inappropriate relationship," Patricia interjected. "For Isabella's sake." Theodore pulled out his phone and showed them a video he'd taken that morning. On the screen, Isabella sat at the piano with Zara, both of them singing Amazing Grace in perfect harmony. Isabella's face was radiant, her voice clear and strong. "This is my daughter," Theodore said quietly. "This is what she looks like when she's truly happy. This is what she sounds like when she feels safe and loved. Tell me again how ending this relationship serves her interests." The room watched the video in silence. Even Harold's stern expression softened slightly at the sight of Isabella's joy. "It's not about the relationship," Vincent said finally. "It's about the perception, the media narrative, the impact on." "The impact on what?" Theodore interrupted. "On profits? On reputation? On the opinions of people who don't know us and don't care about us." "On your daughter's future," Harold said firmly. "On her ability to navigate the world without being defined by this scandal. Her future is bright because she's learning to be happy again," Theodore said. "Her future is secure because she's surrounded by people who love her unconditionally. Everything else is just noise." He walked to the window, looking down at the street where photographers still clustered like vultures. I've spent 3 years trying to buy Isabella's happiness. The best therapists, the most expensive treatments, the finest tutors. None of it worked. And then a woman making $12 an hour accomplished what millions of dollars couldn't. Because she's taking advantage of a vulnerable child, Patricia said desperately. Because she sees Isabella as a person, not a problem to be solved, Theodore replied. Because she understands that healing comes from connection, not isolation. Janet Morrison cleared her throat. Theodore, we understand you're emotionally invested in this situation. But you have responsibilities beyond your personal feelings. You have shareholders, employees, a legacy to protect. And I have a daughter to raise, Theodore said, turning back to face them. A daughter who deserves to grow up in a home filled with love, not fear. Harold stood up slowly. What exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing that you do what you feel you need to do, and I'll do what I know is right. You're willing to risk everything? I'm willing to risk everything that doesn't matter to protect everything that does. The board members exchanged glances. Harold's voice was heavy when he spoke. Theodore, you're forcing our hand. I'm not forcing anything. I'm making a choice. You're free to make yours. Vincent leaned forward. If you continue this relationship, we'll have no choice but to call for a vote of no confidence. Then call it, Theodore said simply. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Harold raised his hand for silence. You're willing to give up control of Blackwood Industries? I'm willing to give up control of a company to maintain control of my family, Theodore replied. My father built this business to provide for his family. If it's now threatening to destroy my family, then it's lost its purpose. Patricia's voice was almost pleading. Theodore, please reconsider. Once we vote, there's no going back. There's no going back anyway, Theodore said. I've already made my choice. The question is whether you'll make yours based on fear or on trust. Harold looked around the table, reading the faces of the other board members. All in favor of calling for a vote of no confidence in Theodore Blackwood as CEO of Blackwood Industries? 8 hands rose slowly. Harold's remained down, along with 3 others. The motion passes, Harold said quietly. Theodore, you have 30 days to transition your responsibilities. Understood, Theodore said, feeling strangely lighter. I'll have my resignation letter on your desk by end of business today. As he walked toward the door, Janet Morrison called out, Theodore, what will you do now? He paused, his hand on the doorknob. I'm going to go home to my family. I'm going to help my daughter practice piano. I'm going to learn how to make cornbread from a man who's become like a father to me. And I'm going to figure out how to love someone the way she deserves to be loved. Theodore walked into his home to find Zara and Isabella in the kitchen, flour everywhere, both of them laughing as they tried to follow Marcus's cornbread recipe over video call. No, Miss Isabella, Marcus was saying from the laptop screen. You fold the batter, you don't beat it to death. Papa! Isabella called out, her face dusted with flour. We're making a mess, but Marcus says that's the best part. Zara looked up from the mixing bowl, her expression anxious. How did it go? I'm no longer the CEO of Blackwood Industries, Theodore said, loosening his tie. The kitchen fell silent. Even Marcus stopped talking on the video call. Oh, Theodore, Zara whispered. I'm so sorry. Don't be, he said, walking over to kiss her forehead. I've never felt more free in my life. But your company, your legacy. My legacy is right here, Theodore said, pulling Isabella into a hug. My legacy is raising a daughter who knows she's loved, who knows she's worthy, who knows that family isn't about blood or money, it's about showing up for each other. Isabella hugged him back tightly. Papa, are we going to be okay? We're going to be more than okay, sweetheart. We're going to be happy. Marcus cleared his throat from the laptop. Well, I hate to interrupt this beautiful moment, but y'all still got cornbread to finish. And Theodore, son, you better roll up your sleeves because this family cooks together. Christmas Eve found them in Zara's small apartment, surrounded by her neighbors who'd become like family. Theodore sat on the worn couch, Isabella curled up against his side, both of them listening to Zara sing with the community choir that had gathered in the living room. The contrast couldn't have been more stark, from the marble and crystal of the penthouse to the warm, crowded apartment where laughter echoed off the walls and love filled every corner. Theodore had never been happier. "Papa," Isabella whispered, "I like it here." "Me too, sweetheart." It feels like Mama's stories about when she was little. About how family isn't about how big your house is, but how big your heart is. Theodore felt tears prick his eyes. "Your mama was a smart woman." "She would have loved Miss Zara," Isabella said confidently. "And she would have loved Marcus. And Mrs. Rodriguez next door who makes the best tamales. And everyone here who makes us feel like we belong." As if on cue, Zara's voice soared on the final note of Silent Night, and the room erupted in applause and cheers. She looked over at Theodore and Isabella, her eyes bright with joy, and mouthed, "I love you." Theodore mouthed back, "I love you too." Later, after the neighbors had gone home and Isabella had fallen asleep on the couch, Theodore and Zara sat on the small balcony, looking out over the lights of Harlem. "Are you sure about this?" Zara asked quietly. "About giving up everything you built?" "I didn't give up everything," Theodore said, taking her hand. "I gave up the things that were keeping me from everything that mattered." "But your penthouse, your company, your whole life." "My life is right here," Theodore said, bringing her hand to his lips. "My life is Isabella laughing with Marcus over video calls. My life is watching you teach her that music can heal anything. My life is learning that love doesn't come with price tags or board meetings." Zara leaned against his shoulder. "What happens now?" "Now we figure it out together," Theodore said. "I have enough saved to buy a house in a good neighborhood. Maybe somewhere with a yard where Isabella can play, and a piano room where you two can make music. Maybe somewhere close to Marcus so he can teach us all how to cook. And work. I've had 3 job offers since the news broke," Theodore said with a smile. "Apparently, some people think a CEO who chooses family over profit might be worth hiring." "And the custody hearing?" Theodore's expression grew serious. "That's next week. But I have faith that any judge who sees Isabella with us will understand that love is the only qualification that matters for family." The custody hearing had ended 2 days ago with Margaret tearfully withdrawing her petition after spending an hour with Isabella, Zara, and Theodore together. "I can see she's loved," she told the judge. "That's all Catherine would have wanted." Now they stood in the living room of their new home, a beautiful brownstone with a music room and a yard where Isabella could safely explore, watching the ball drop on television. 5 minutes until the new year, Zara announced, pulling Theodore and Isabella into a dance around the living room. "I can't believe how much has changed," Isabella said, spinning in a circle. "A year ago I was sad all the time. Now I'm happy all the time." "Not all the time," Theodore said, laughing. "You were pretty upset when Marcus burned the mac and cheese last week." "That was a tragedy," Isabella said solemnly, making them all laugh. As the countdown began, Theodore pulled both his girls close. "Whatever happens in this new year, we face it together." "Together," Zara agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "Together," Isabella echoed. "Happy New Year." The room filled with cheers and kisses and laughter. Outside, fireworks lit up the Brooklyn sky, but inside their warm home, the real magic was happening. A family that had found each other against all odds, choosing love over fear, connection over isolation, hope over despair. 6 months later, Theodore would propose to Zara in the music room while Isabella played All of Me on the piano. A year later, they would renew their vows in the same Harlem church where Zara had sung in the choir. And years after that, Isabella would tell the story of how her father walked in on her dancing with the woman who became her mother, and how that moment changed everything. But tonight, on New Year's Eve, they were simply a family. Imperfect, unconventional, and absolutely, completely whole. The cold billionaire had learned to love. The careful maid had learned to trust. The isolated daughter had learned to hope. And together, they had learned that the most beautiful music comes from hearts that beat in harmony. Love, it turned out, was the only thing that had ever mattered. And there it is, proof that sometimes the most impossible love stories are the ones that change everything. When Theodore walked in on Zara and Isabella dancing, he found more than just joy in his daughter's life. He found his own heart, his own family, his own happily ever after. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.